I watched humans fight and realized we never stood a chance. First contact and miscalculation. The stars had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy, but none had prepared Commander Vexthor for what he was about to encounter. He stood on the command deck of the Kryn Dominion warship Eternal Fang, his four eyes scanning the holographic display that showed a small vessel drifting through the neutral zone near the Andromeda frontier. The ship appeared unremarkable, constructed from simple alloys and powered by what his sensors identified as primitive fusion reactors. Vexthor belonged to the Kryn, a species that had dominated their region of space for 3 centuries. His kind stood nearly 3 meters tall, with exoskeletons that could withstand extreme temperatures and reflexes honed by evolution on a high-gravity world. The Kryn had conquered 12 star systems through superior technology and military discipline. They followed strict protocols, maintained rigid hierarchies, and expected all lesser species to submit or be eliminated. The vessel ahead bore markings in an unknown language. Vexthor's translation systems worked for several moments before producing results. The ship was called the Horizon's Edge, registered to something called the United Earth Space Agency. Earth. Vexthor searched his database and found minimal information. A small world in an unremarkable system, home to a species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They called themselves humans. Vexthor initiated standard contact protocols. His communication officer transmitted the Dominion's claim message, informing the human vessel that they had entered Kryn space without authorization. The response came back in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. A voice belonging to someone named Dr. Elena Martinez apologized for the intrusion and explained they were conducting scientific research on dark matter fluctuations in the region. She requested permission to complete their measurements before departing. The Kryn commander felt something close to amusement. These humans thought they could simply ask permission after violating territorial boundaries. Such naivety confirmed what his initial scans suggested. These creatures were technologically primitive and politically insignificant. Vexthor made his decision quickly. The Horizon's Edge would be captured, its crew interrogated, and the vessel's technology analyzed. If the humans proved useful, they might be allowed to serve the Dominion. If not, they would be eliminated as a warning to other species. Vexthor ordered his weapons officer to disable the human ship's engines with a precision plasma burst. The attack was calculated to cripple without destroying. Kryn military doctrine emphasized efficiency and minimal resource waste. The plasma bolt struck the Horizon's Edge exactly where intended, tearing through the engine compartment and causing a cascade of internal explosions. Vexthor expected immediate surrender signals. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human ship did not stop moving. Its main engines were clearly destroyed, yet the vessel maintained course and orientation. Vexthor's tactical officer reported that the humans were rerouting power from their scientific equipment to auxiliary thrusters. They were also sealing damaged sections with emergency bulkheads and evacuating crew members from areas exposed to vacuum. What disturbed Vexthor most was the speed of their response. From the moment of impact to the implementation of emergency procedures, fewer than 30 seconds had elapsed. The humans were adapting to catastrophic damage with remarkable efficiency. This was not the behavior of an inexperienced species. This was the response of survivors who had faced disaster before. Dr. Martinez's voice came over the communication channel again, but now it carried a different tone. No more apologies or requests for permission. She informed Vexthor that his attack constituted an act of war under human protocols. She stated that the Horizon's Edge would defend itself, and that he would be held accountable for his actions. Vexthor almost laughed. What could a crippled research vessel possibly do against a Kryn warship? The answer came when the Horizon's Edge launched what appeared to be a probe directly at the Eternal Fang. Vexthor's defensive systems tracked the object and prepared to destroy it. But the probe suddenly split into dozens of smaller fragments. Each fragment carried a different trajectory, and several struck the warship's hull before point defense systems could respond. The impacts caused minimal damage, but that was not their purpose. Vexthor's technical officer reported with alarm that the fragments were sophisticated sensor packages. The humans had just mapped every detail of the Kryn ship's exterior, identifying armor thickness, weapon placements, shield generator locations, and structural weak points. Even more concerning, They were broadcasting this information on open frequencies. Any ship within light years could now access complete tactical specifications of a Kryn warship. The human vessel began moving in an unusual pattern, using its remaining thrusters to create unpredictable acceleration vectors. Vexthor realized they were making themselves difficult to target, while simultaneously closing the distance between the two ships. This violated every logical principle of space combat. Damaged vessels should retreat or surrender, not advance toward superior opponents. Engineer Marcus Webb worked in a section of the horizon's edge that had lost atmosphere. He wore an emergency pressure suit and operated by the light of battery-powered lamps. Webb was repurposing the ship's dark matter research equipment into something that was never intended. The device they used to study cosmic phenomena could, with certain modifications, generate a focused beam of exotic particles. Webb had no idea if it would work as a weapon, but they were going to find out. Dr. Kenji Tanaka coordinated with the remaining crew members through their suit communication systems. Every scientist aboard the Horizon's Edge was now working to convert their research tools into instruments of survival. Spectrometers became targeting sensors. Quantum computers calculated firing solutions. Sample collection drones were loaded with chemical explosives originally intended for asteroid analysis. Captain Sarah Chen commanded a cargo hauler called the Morning Star that was 3 star systems away when she received the distress signal from the Horizon's Edge. The message included the tactical data that Dr. Martinez had broadcast about the Kryn warship. Chen immediately changed course toward the research vessel's location. She sent word to every human ship within range. 14 other vessels acknowledged and altered their trajectories. Chen's cargo hauler was not designed for combat. It carried mining equipment, industrial supplies, and prefabricated habitat modules. But Chen had served in Earth's planetary defense force before becoming a commercial pilot. She began mentally cataloging everything aboard her ship that could be repurposed. Mining charges could become missiles. Industrial cutting lasers could become weapons. Even the cargo containers themselves could be turned into kinetic projectiles if accelerated to sufficient velocity. Back at the battle site, the Horizon's Edge reached what Marcus Webb considered effective range for their improvised weapon. Dr. Martinez gave the order to fire. The modified dark matter projector discharged with a pulse of energy that momentarily dimmed every remaining system on the human ship. The beam struck the Eternal Fang's shield generators with precisely calculated force. Vexthor watched in disbelief as his ship's primary shields collapsed. The humans had somehow generated a beam that specifically targeted the quantum frequencies his defensive systems used. Impossible. They should not have the knowledge or technology to achieve such a thing. Yet the evidence was undeniable. His vessel was now vulnerable. The Horizon's Edge fired again, and this time the beam punched directly through the Eternal Fang's hull armor. The weapon's power was insufficient to cause catastrophic damage, but it created breaches in 3 different sections. Kryn crew members scrambled to seal the compromised areas as atmosphere vented into space. Vexthor made a tactical decision. He ordered his ship to retreat to a safe distance while repairs were conducted. The Eternal Fang had superior speed and could easily outrun the crippled human vessel, but as his ship withdrew, Vexthor felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service. Uncertainty. These humans had taken a research ship, suffered devastating damage, and still managed to wound a Kryn warship. What would they be capable of if they had been prepared for combat? The answer began arriving 6 hours later. Captain Chen's Morning Star dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone, followed by 14 other human vessels. None were military ships. Vexthor's sensors identified cargo haulers, mining platforms, orbital construction vehicles, and even a passenger transport. Yet each vessel had been modified during their journey. Weapons had been improvised from industrial equipment. Armor plating had been welded over vital systems. The humans were coming not as a coordinated fleet, but as individuals unified by a single purpose. Vexthor watched the approaching vessels and realized he had made a catastrophic error. He had assumed the humans were weak because their technology seemed primitive. He had failed to consider that survival often mattered more than sophistication. These beings did not need advanced weapons to be dangerous. They needed determination, creativity, and the willingness to turn anything into a tool of war. The Kryn commander sent an urgent message to Dominion headquarters. He reported that humanity was not the minor species they appeared to be. He warned that further conflict could escalate beyond control. He requested reinforcements and authorization to negotiate a ceasefire. The response came back 3 hours later. His superiors dismissed his concerns. They ordered him to destroy all human vessels and capture survivors for interrogation. Vexthor looked at the tactical display showing 15 human ships approaching his position. Behind them, the crippled Horizon's Edge was still transmitting data about Kryn technology to anyone who would listen. The humans were not trying to hide or escape. They were announcing their presence, sharing their knowledge, and advancing toward an enemy that outgunned them. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vexthor felt fear. The Swarm Awakens Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Morning Star and studied the tactical situation with growing concern. The Kryn warship ahead was larger and more powerful than any vessel in the human fleet. Its weapons could probably destroy her cargo hauler in a single salvo. Yet Chen felt no inclination to retreat. The Horizon's Edge crew had fought against impossible odds and survived. Now it was time for other humans to demonstrate the same determination. Chen opened a communication channel to the other human ships. She spoke calmly but firmly. They would not attack in formation or follow coordinated battle plans. Each captain would engage the enemy using their own judgment and available resources. The humans would fight as individuals working toward a common goal, adapting to circumstances as they developed. This was not military doctrine that Chen had learned in training. This was the natural human approach to overwhelming challenges. Engineer Marcus Webb had transferred from the damaged Horizon's Edge to a mining platform called the Stonebreaker. The platform was designed to extract minerals from asteroids, but Webb saw different possibilities. The Stonebreaker carried industrial plasma cutters capable of slicing through solid rock. Those same cutters could potentially penetrate warship armor if used at close range. Webb shared his idea with the platform's crew, and they began preparing their vessel for an attack run. Dr. Kenji Tanaka remained aboard the Horizon's Edge, working with the few crew members who had not evacuated. Their ship was barely functional, but Tanaka had discovered something important. The Kryn vessel used predictable patterns in its shield modulation. By analyzing the data they had gathered during the first engagement, Tanaka could predict exactly when the enemy shields would be most vulnerable to specific types of attacks. He transmitted this information to every human ship in the area. The battle began when the Kryn warship opened fire on the closest human vessel, a passenger transport that had been converted into a makeshift carrier for small utility craft. The Kryn plasma weapon struck the transport's improvised armor, causing severe damage but not destroying the ship. Instead of retreating, the transport launched 24 small craft that scattered in different directions. Each craft carried a human pilot and whatever weapons they had managed to install during their journey. Vexthor watched the human response with growing confusion. The small craft were flying in seemingly random patterns, making themselves difficult to target. Several craft deliberately flew close to the Eternal Fang, forcing his point defense systems to track multiple fast-moving objects simultaneously. This was not standard military tactics. This was chaos deliberately created to overwhelm enemy targeting systems. Captain Chen brought the Morning Star in from an unexpected angle, using the cover provided by the small craft. Her cargo hauler fired mining charges that had been modified with proximity fuses. The charges were not powerful enough to seriously damage the Kryn warship, but they created clouds of debris that interfered with sensors and communications. Chen's real purpose was to blind the enemy, while other ships moved into attack positions. The Stonebreaker accelerated toward the Eternal Fang at maximum speed. Marcus Webb had calculated that the mining platform's industrial shields could withstand at least one direct hit from Kryn weapons. His plan was simple but insane. The Stonebreaker would ram the enemy vessel, using its plasma cutters at the moment of impact to slice through the warship's hull. Webb's crew had voted unanimously to attempt the maneuver, knowing they might not survive. Vexthor saw the mining platform approaching and recognized the threat. He ordered his weapons officer to concentrate all fire on the Stonebreaker. Multiple plasma bolts struck the platform, overwhelming its shields and causing catastrophic damage. Yet the platform continued forward on momentum alone. When it collided with the Eternal Fang, the impact sent shockwaves through both vessels. Webb activated the plasma cutters at the last moment. and the industrial tools carved deep wounds in the warship's armor before the stonebreaker broke apart. The explosion killed Marcus Webb and his entire crew. But their sacrifice created exactly what the other human ships needed. The Eternal Fang's shields were temporarily overloaded from the impact, and a massive section of hull armor had been compromised. Dr. Tanaka identified the moment of maximum vulnerability and transmitted the signal to attack. Every human ship fired simultaneously. Improvised weapons of every description struck the Kryn warship from multiple angles. Cargo containers full of explosive mining charges detonated against the hull. Industrial lasers targeted the weakened armor section. Small craft released clouds of metallic chaff that disrupted the warship's sensors. The Horizon's Edge fired its modified dark matter projector through the gap in the armor, causing internal explosions that cascaded through multiple decks. Vexthor felt his ship shudder from the coordinated assault. His tactical officer reported severe damage to multiple systems. 3 decks were exposed to vacuum. The main reactor was operating at reduced capacity. Shield generators were offline and would require hours to repair. The Eternal Fang was still functional, but it had been wounded by vessels that should have posed no threat. The Kryn commander made the only logical decision. He ordered a full retreat to the nearest Dominion forward base. His ship withdrew from the battle zone, using its superior speed to escape the pursuing human vessels. But as the Eternal Fang jumped to hyperspace, Vexthor knew this was not a temporary setback. The humans would follow. They had demonstrated an ability to track ships through hyperspace, something the Dominion's intelligence services had deemed impossible for a species of their technological level. Captain Chen watched the Kryn warship disappear and immediately ordered her ship to plot a pursuit course. The other human vessels did the same. They were not content to defend their territory or protect the damaged research ship. They intended to hunt the enemy across interstellar space, ensuring that the Kryn understood the price of attacking humans. The Morning Star and 7 other surviving human ships followed the Eternal Fang's hyperspace trail. Chen's navigator had modified their tracking systems using data from Dr. Tanaka's research equipment. They could follow the unique quantum signature left by the Kryn ship's faster-than-light drive. The humans were learning to hunt across distances that should have made pursuit impossible. 3 days later, the human ships emerged from hyperspace near a Kryn forward operating base. The facility was designed to support military operations in this region of space. It held fuel reserves, ammunition stockpiles, repair facilities, and defensive installations. Vexthor's damaged warship had docked at the base to undergo emergency repairs. He had sent detailed reports to Dominion Command, warning them that the humans were far more dangerous than initial assessments suggested. The base commander, Admiral Krathzor, had dismissed Vexthor's warnings as exaggeration. No primitive species could threaten an established Dominion installation. The base had defensive weapons, shield generators, and a garrison of trained Kryn soldiers. It would take a significant military fleet to pose any real danger. When the base's sensors detected 8 human ships approaching, Krathzor prepared to demonstrate proper military superiority. Captain Chen had anticipated that the base would be defended. During the 3-day pursuit, she had coordinated with the other human captains to develop a strategy. They would not attempt a direct assault on the installation's defenses. Instead, they would target the base's supply infrastructure. The humans had learned an important lesson from their first encounter. Destroying an enemy's ability to fight was more effective than trying to destroy the enemy directly. The human ships spread out as they approached the base, each vessel heading toward a different target. Chen's Morning Star fired modified mining charges at the facility's fuel storage tanks. A cargo hauler released clouds of metallic dust that interfered with targeting sensors. A construction vehicle used its industrial manipulator arms to tear communication arrays from their moorings. The remaining ships attacked ammunition depots, power generators, and docking facilities. The Kryn-based defenses engaged the human vessels, inflicting serious damage on 3 ships. But the humans had already accomplished their objective. Massive explosions tore through the fuel storage area, destroying reserves that would have taken months to replace. Secondary explosions followed as fires spread to ammunition stockpiles. The base's communication systems went offline, cutting it off from the rest of the Dominion fleet. Admiral Krathzor watched in horror as his forward base burned. The humans had not tried to capture the installation or destroy its defensive weapons. They had simply rendered it useless. Without fuel, ammunition, or communications, the base could no longer support military operations in the region. The Dominion's strategic position in this sector had been crippled by 8 civilian vessels, converted into improvised warships. Vexthor stood beside the admiral and said nothing. He had tried to warn his superiors, but they had refused to listen. Now they would learn the same lesson he had discovered. Humans did not fight according to established military conventions. They identified vulnerabilities, exploited weaknesses, and adapted their tactics based on available resources. They were not warriors in the traditional sense. They were problem solvers who treated combat as another challenge to overcome through creativity and determination. The human ships withdrew from the damaged base and disappeared into hyperspace. Captain Chen set course not for Earth but for another Kryn installation. The humans were going to systematically dismantle the Dominion's military infrastructure in this region. They would attack supply lines, destroy communication networks, and make it impossible for Kryn forces to operate effectively. This was not a battle for territory. This was a campaign to break the enemy's ability to wage war. Vexthor sent another urgent message to Dominion headquarters. This time he included detailed tactical analysis of human capabilities and strategic recommendations. He emphasized that the humans could track Kryn ships through hyperspace, adapt civilian technology for military purposes, and coordinate attacks without centralized command structure. He warned that underestimating them would lead to catastrophic losses. The response from Dominion Command arrived 2 days later. They acknowledged the threat and authorized a significant military response. 500 warships would be assembled and sent to human space. The entire species would be eliminated before they could spread their dangerous influence further. Vexthor read the orders with a sense of impending disaster. The Dominion was about to discover exactly how dangerous cornered humans could become. The price of underestimation. The Dominion War Council convened in their grand chamber on the Kryn homeworld. 12 high admirals sat in a circular formation, their exoskeletons gleaming under ceremonial lighting. They reviewed Vexthor's reports with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright disbelief. Supreme Admiral Thexler, eldest and most decorated of the council members, dismissed the warnings with a gesture of his primary manipulator appendages. The council refused to accept that a newly spacefaring species could threaten the Dominion's military supremacy. They attributed Vexthor's losses to incompetence rather than human capability. The decision was made to assemble the largest Kryn fleet in decades and launch a decisive strike against Earth itself. 500 warships would demonstrate the price of resisting Dominion authority. The humans would be given one opportunity to surrender their entire civilization. Refusal would result in total annihilation. The Kryn armada began gathering at staging points across Dominion space. Each warship was a masterpiece of military engineering, equipped with plasma weapons, quantum shields, and faster-than-light drives that could cross a galaxy in weeks. The fleet's commanders were experienced officers who had participated in the conquest of multiple star systems. They studied the available intelligence on human capabilities and developed tactical plans designed to overwhelm Earth's defenses through superior firepower and numerical advantage. While the Dominion prepared their massive fleet, humanity had not been idle. Captain Sarah Chen returned to Earth after destroying 3 more Kryn installations. She brought with her detailed intelligence about Dominion technology, tactics, and strategic vulnerabilities. Chen and the other surviving captains met with Earth's Unified Defense Command to share everything they had learned during their campaign. Dr. Elena Martinez had also returned home aboard the repaired Horizon's Edge. The research vessel carried terabytes of data collected during combat encounters with Kryn forces. Martinez worked with Earth's top scientists and engineers to analyze this information. They discovered that Dominion technology was advanced, but not superior in every respect. The Kryn relied on certain fundamental principles that could be exploited or countered with human innovation. Earth's industrial capacity shifted entirely to military production. Factories that once manufactured civilian goods now produced weapons, armor, and spacecraft components. Orbital construction facilities worked around the clock to build defensive installations throughout the solar system. Asteroid mining operations focused on extracting materials needed for military applications. Humanity was transforming their home system into a fortress. Engineer Marcus Webb's sacrifice aboard the Stonebreaker had taught human commanders an important lesson. Civilian industrial equipment could be as effective as purpose-built weapons if used creatively. Earth's engineers began designing ships that incorporated mining lasers, construction tools, and manufacturing systems into their basic structure. These vessels would be able to repair themselves during combat and fabricate ammunition from raw materials gathered in space. Dr. Kenji Tanaka led a team developing new weapons based on captured Kryn technology. They had discovered that Dominion shields operated on specific quantum frequencies that could be disrupted by carefully modulated energy pulses. Tanaka's team built devices capable of generating these disruptive pulses, effectively creating a weapon that could neutralize the enemy's primary defensive advantage. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter became humanity's first line of defense. Thousands of automated weapons platforms were installed throughout the belt, hidden among rocks and ice. Each platform was programmed to activate when enemy ships entered range, creating a minefield that would extend across millions of cubic kilometers. The platforms were not particularly sophisticated or powerful, but there were so many of them that any fleet would suffer significant losses attempting to pass through. Captain Chen took command of Earth's defense fleet, which now numbered nearly 200 vessels. Most were converted civilian ships similar to those that had fought at the Kryn forward base. Others were newly constructed warships designed specifically for combat, using lessons learned from previous encounters. The fleet was not impressive by Dominion standards, but Chen knew that human effectiveness did not depend on matching enemy technology. It depended on using every available advantage, no matter how unconventional. Jupiter's moons had been fortified with defensive installations capable of targeting ships at extreme range. Saturn's rings concealed hundreds of small attack craft ready to launch surprise strikes. The outer planets held supply depots and repair facilities that would allow human forces to operate across the entire solar system. Earth's defenders were not planning to meet the enemy in a single decisive battle. They intended to force the Kryn to fight through every layer of defense, bleeding them with 1,000 small engagements. When Dominion sensors finally detected the massive Kryn armada approaching Sol system, the information was immediately transmitted to Earth. The enemy fleet was larger than even the most pessimistic predictions had suggested. 523 warships of various classes, carrying enough firepower to sterilize multiple planets. Supreme Admiral Thexlar commanded from his flagship at the center of the formation, confident that humanity would surrender when they witnessed the assembled might of the Dominion. The Kryn fleet entered the outer solar system and immediately encountered the first layer of human defenses. Thousands of sensor probes scattered throughout the region began tracking the enemy ships, transmitting detailed position data to human command centers. The Dominion vessels ignored these probes as harmless surveillance equipment. They failed to recognize that each probe also contained explosive charges that could be remotely detonated. Captain Chen waited until the Kryn fleet reached optimal range before giving the order to activate the sensor probes. Thousands of small explosions erupted throughout the enemy formation. The blasts were not powerful enough to destroy warships, but they created massive clouds of debris that interfered with sensors and communications. The Dominion fleet suddenly found itself effectively blind, unable to clearly see what lay ahead. The Kryn armada continued forward, maintaining formation despite the sensor disruption. They entered the asteroid belt still confident in their overwhelming superiority. The automated weapons platforms hidden among the asteroids activated simultaneously, launching missiles and firing energy weapons from thousands of concealed positions. The attack came from every direction at once, with no clear target for the Dominion warships to return fire against. Supreme Admiral Thexlar watched in frustrated anger as his fleet took casualties from an enemy they could not see clearly. Dozens of Kryn warships were damaged or destroyed by weapons that seemed to materialize from nowhere. His tactical officers struggled to identify targets among the countless asteroids while maintaining formation and defensive shields. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon that could not be easily countered. Dr. Tanaka's shield disruption devices proved devastatingly effective. Human attack craft emerged from the asteroid field and fired modulated energy pulses at Kryn warships. The pulses caused shield generators to overload and fail, leaving the vessels temporarily vulnerable to conventional weapons. Before the Dominion crews could restore their defenses, missiles and kinetic projectiles would strike exposed hulls, causing severe damage. The battle spread across millions of kilometers, as the Kryn fleet attempted to force its way through the asteroid belt. Human defenders fought from prepared positions, attacking and then retreating before enemy forces could concentrate fire on them. Small groups of ships would strike a target, cause damage, and disappear among the asteroids. The humans refused to engage in the kind of large-scale fleet battle where the Dominion's numerical advantage would be decisive. Captain Chen commanded the human defense fleet from her position near Jupiter. She had divided her ships into independent squadrons that operated with maximum autonomy. Each squadron chose its own targets and tactics based on local conditions. This decentralized command structure made it impossible for the Kryn to predict human movements or counter their strategies effectively. The converted mining vessel, called the Deep Digger, demonstrated the effectiveness of human improvisation. The ship's crew used their industrial drilling equipment to bore into several large asteroids, filling the resulting cavities with high explosives. When Kryn warships passed nearby, the asteroids were detonated remotely, creating fragmentary explosions that shredded everything within their blast radius. 3 Dominion vessels were destroyed by these improvised mines. Supreme Admiral Thexelar realized that his carefully planned military operation had become a chaotic series of small engagements where his numerical superiority meant nothing. The humans were not fighting a traditional battle. They were conducting a systematic campaign of harassment and attrition, designed to drain his fleet's resources and morale. Every kilometer forward cost more ships and more lives while the enemy remained frustratingly elusive. The Kryn fleet finally broke through the asteroid belt after losing 97 warships and suffering damage to countless others. But the human defenses were far from exhausted. As the Dominion vessels approached Mars orbit, they encountered another layer of defensive installations. Weapons platforms hidden on Mars itself and among its moons opened fire, targeting the damaged ships that had survived passage through the asteroid belt. Dr. Martinez coordinated the Mars defenses from an underground command center. She had studied Dominion tactics extensively and anticipated how they would respond to various threats. When the Kryn fleet attempted to destroy the weapons platforms with long-range bombardment, Martinez activated the next phase of Earth's defense. Hidden installations launched thousands of small attack drones that swarmed the enemy vessels, overwhelming their point defense systems through sheer numbers. The drones were simple devices, little more than explosives attached to basic propulsion systems, but there were so many of them that destroying them all before they reached their targets was impossible. Kryn warships found themselves under attack by weapons that cost almost nothing to produce, but required expensive countermeasures to defend against. The humans were using basic economics as a military strategy, forcing the Dominion to expend valuable resources countering cheap threats. Supreme Admiral Thexelar ordered his fleet to accelerate toward Earth, accepting casualties to escape the defensive zones around Mars. His forces had been reduced to fewer than 400 operational warships, but this was still sufficient to overwhelm Earth's remaining defenses. The human homeworld lay ahead, and the Dominion would demonstrate the price of resistance. The Kryn Armada approached Earth orbit and prepared for final bombardment. But as targeting systems locked onto the planet's surface, something unexpected occurred. Earth itself seemed to come alive with defensive fire. Thousands of weapon systems hidden across the planet's surface launched missiles and energy beams at the orbiting fleet. The entire surface of Earth had been transformed into a defensive installation. Captain Chen led the human fleet in a final coordinated assault on the Dominion forces. Her ships emerged from positions throughout the inner solar system, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. The humans had conserved their main battle fleet for this moment, waiting until the enemy was committed and unable to retreat easily. The battle for Earth orbit lasted 14 hours. Kryn warships found themselves trapped between planetary defenses below and attacking human ships from every other direction. The Dominion's numerical advantage had been systematically eliminated through the layers of defenses they had fought through. Now they faced an enemy that was determined to protect their homeworld at any cost. Dr. Tanaka unleashed his most effective weapons during the final battle. Human ships equipped with shield disruption devices worked in coordination with vessels carrying conventional weapons. The disruption pulses would disable enemy shields, and immediately afterward, other ships would strike the vulnerable targets. This coordinated tactic proved so effective that Kryn casualties mounted rapidly, despite their technological advantages. Supreme Admiral Thexlar made the decision to retreat when his fleet strength fell below 200 operational warships. The Dominion had lost more than half their forces without achieving any strategic objectives. Earth remained unscathed, and human resistance had not been broken. The Admiral ordered his surviving ships to withdraw from the solar system and return to Dominion space. But the humans did not allow an easy retreat. Captain Chen's fleet pursued the withdrawing Kryn forces, attacking their rear elements and preventing them from regrouping effectively. Human attack craft harassed the fleeing ships across multiple star systems, ensuring that the Dominion suffered maximum casualties from their failed invasion. Commander Vexthor observed the battle from his repaired warship on the edge of the solar system. He had been assigned to a support role after his initial warnings were ignored. Now he watched as the predictions he had made came true. The humans had defeated the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in decades, using creativity and determination to overcome technological disadvantages. The surviving Kryn vessels finally escaped human pursuit after losing 43 more ships during their retreat. Supreme Admiral Thexlar returned to the Dominion homeworld in disgrace. Less than 150 warships survived from the original force of 523. The military operation had been an absolute disaster. Vexthor submitted his final report to the Dominion War Council. This time his words carried weight supported by undeniable evidence. He explained that humans represented a threat unlike any the Kryn had encountered. They did not rely on superior technology or overwhelming force. They used intelligence, adaptability, and unconventional thinking to turn every situation to their advantage. They could transform civilian equipment into military weapons, coordinate complex operations without centralized command, and fight with determination that bordered on suicidal. The War Council met in emergency session to discuss the human threat. For the first time in Dominion history, they were considering terms of peace with a species they had attempted to conquer. The cost of continued conflict was clearly unsustainable. Every engagement with humans had demonstrated that military victory would require resources the Dominion could not afford to spend. Captain Chen received a surprising communication 3 weeks after the battle for Earth. A Dominion diplomatic vessel requested permission to enter the solar system under a flag of truce. The Kryn were offering to negotiate a peace treaty and establish formal diplomatic relations. The species that had attempted genocide weeks earlier now sought cooperation. Earth's government debated how to respond to this offer. Many argued that the Dominion could not be trusted and should be pursued until completely defeated. Others recognized that continued warfare would cost countless human lives even if victory was ultimately achieved. The decision was made to accept negotiations while maintaining full military readiness. Vexthor led the Dominion negotiating team to Earth. He had requested this assignment, despite knowing it would effectively end his military career. The commander had developed genuine respect for human capabilities and believed that peace between their species was possible. He hoped to prevent future conflicts by helping his people understand what made humans so formidable. The negotiations lasted 6 months and resulted in a comprehensive treaty. The Dominion agreed to cease all military operations in regions near human space and formally recognized Earth's sovereignty. Humans agreed not to attack Dominion territory and to share certain technologies that could benefit both civilizations. Most importantly, both species committed to establishing cultural exchange programs and joint scientific research projects. Vexthor remained on Earth as the first Dominion ambassador to humanity. He spent years studying human culture, trying to understand the source of their extraordinary resilience. He eventually wrote a comprehensive analysis that became required reading throughout the Dominion military and government. His conclusion was simple, but profound. Humans were dangerous not because they were violent or aggressive. They were dangerous because they refused to accept defeat. When faced with impossible odds, humans did not surrender or despair. They analyzed the situation, identified every available resource, and developed creative solutions to overcome their challenges. This fundamental characteristic made them natural survivors who could adapt to any environment and defeat any enemy. Willing to underestimate them, the galaxy had learned an important lesson from the human-Kryn conflict. Advanced technology and military might could not guarantee victory against an opponent with superior adaptability and determination. Humanity had earned their place among spacefaring civilizations not through conquest, but through demonstrating that they could not be conquered. Years later, when other species asked Vexthor why the mighty Dominion had failed to defeat a primitive species, his answer was always the same. They were never primitive. We simply measured advancement using the wrong criteria. We counted weapons and warships. We should have been measuring creativity and will to survive. By those standards, humans were the most advanced species in the galaxy. We never stood a chance against them.